Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of IHR TV. Women are denied the right to pass their nationality to their own children as men are able to in 25 countries around the world. If you are a woman or if yours is a mixed marriage, your life will be dictated by technicalities and injustices. During the outbreak of COVID-19, gender discriminatory nationality laws have resulted in severe cases of family separation and exclusion from economic relief packages. Today, I'm interviewing Harrington, who is the campaign manager of the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights. Harrington, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for your attention to this issue. It's really appreciated.
What is the current situation around the world in terms of gender discriminatory nationality laws? How many countries retain gender discriminatory provisions in their nationality laws?
You have 25 countries globally where women lack the same rights as men to pass nationality to their own children. And approximately 50 countries with some form of gender discrimination in their nationality laws. Most of those countries, women lack the same rights as men to pass nationality to a foreign spouse. And in some instances, women lack the same right to acquire, change, and retain their own nationality, which can be impacted by their own marital status.
What are the reasons behind the resilience of some countries to adopt non-discriminatory nationality laws to allow women to pass their nationality to their children, as well as to recognize mixed marriages?
Historically, gender discrimination in nationality laws was the norm. Nationality laws, if you looked a century ago, virtually all countries had citizenship being derived from the male line. And of course, this was at a time when in many countries, women even lacked property rights, voting rights. So this gender discrimination in nationality laws is not unique to any particular region, culture, religion. They're in multiple regions that come with different, ethnic roots, different cultural traditions, different, religious groups that make up the majority of the population. And so this really clearly illustrates that these laws are really the legacy of patriarchal structures and systems that considered men to be the true holders of citizenship and the natural head of household. Many of them are former colonies that when they achieved independence, the norm at the time globally, whether you looked at France, the UK, Belgium, those nationality laws at the time of many of these countries' independence, they were already gender discriminatory nationality laws. So these new countries oftentimes based their nationality law on the normative law at that time.
What is the role of the international law in making sure that no one is left behind?
So international law is crystal clear on this issue. Discrimination on the basis of sex is a human rights violation. It cannot be justified on the basis of other concerns or priorities by the government. At the same time, every person, every child has the right to a nationality. And yet gender discrimination in nationality laws is a leading cause. It's just one of the primary root causes of statelessness globally. So international law is very clear, and there are a number of core international human rights conventions that speak to this issue. There's the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, which has an article specifying that state parties uphold gender equality in nationality laws. There's the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which enshrines every child's right to a nationality. And in Article 2, that the rights enshrined in the convention cannot be applied in a discriminatory manner based on the sex of the child or the sex of the child's parents. International law is crystal clear that gender discrimination in nationality laws is a violation of international human rights law. At the same time, we know that there is a real lack of enforcement mechanisms for international law, but that does not mean that international law is not useful and is not contributing to change. Gender discrimination in nationality laws is something that is consistently raised by international human rights treaty bodies. So when governments come up for review, let's say they've ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The Committee on the Rights of the Child will highlight the fact that the persistence of gender discrimination in the nationality law is a violation of their commitments under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And at the same time, it is a normative framework, something that I think increasingly, particularly as the number of countries continues to diminish that have this form of discrimination. There I think is increasing pressure, including by peers. You have the Universal Periodic Review process at the United Nations, where governments their human rights records are reviewed and recommendations are made by other governments. Gender discrimination and nationality laws is something that is raised quite frequently through that process, where other governments are making recommendations to their peers to enact reforms to uphold women and men's equal right to confer nationality.
What is the impact of gender discriminatory nationality laws on family, women, and children during the outbreak of COVID-19?
The families of women citizens, women's children and spouses who reside in their country but don't have nationality because of gender discrimination in the law, they're being denied access to the economic relief packages that governments are giving citizens as a result of the lockdown and people's inability to work. Families affected by gender discrimination and nationality laws are not getting the same access to these relief packages. Now, many of these families were already in precarious situations economically before the pandemic because spouses of women citizens that do not have citizenship, adult children of women who could not access their mother's citizenship. Many of them did not have the right to formal employment, and so were experiencing financial insecurity before the pandemic. In other situations, you have many countries, of course, have been closing their borders to everyone except for citizens to enter the country. So for families that are affected by gender discrimination and nationality laws, we've even seen that they have experienced family separation as a result of the lockdown. So you might have children that normally reside in their mother's country, but they were studying abroad when the pandemic broke out. And then when the lockdown order came in place, they were unable to return back home to their mother.
Catherine, can you give us some examples of such impact?
We see in Malaysia, a country where women lack the same right as men to pass nationality to their children when they're born abroad. Malaysian women do have the right to pass nationality to their children when they're born inside the country. If a Malaysian man has a child born outside of the country, it's a very straightforward process. The child gets citizenship at birth. When the pandemic hit and countries were closing their borders to non-citizens, you had pregnant Malaysians abroad that had to make a terrible decision about whether or not to come back to Malaysia. So they could either come back to Malaysia to give birth and make sure their child had access to citizenship at birth, but they would have to return home without their spouse and go through labor without their spouse. Or they could decide to stay abroad so that they would have their partner with them through labor and childbirth, and then face an unknown when it came to trying to get citizenship for their child. Our partners in Malaysia, the Malaysian Campaign for Equal Citizenship, have been in touch with these mothers that now are going on 3 months where they have given birth and have been in Malaysia without their spouse. Many of them, some of them for birth for the first time. Many of them are experiencing significant anxiety, and even a number of them postpartum depression. In Lebanon, for example, is one of the countries where tragically we've seen that the families affected by the country's discriminatory nationality law have not been given the benefit packages that the government has been offering to families as a result of the pandemic. The government said that Lebanese women, they were supposed to be able to get some relief for their families, and many families, when they showed up to the distribution centers, had the government representatives who were passing out this relief not give it to Lebanese women who are married to men who are not themselves Lebanese.
As a campaign manager of the Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights, have you recorded any recent commitment by governments to end gender discrimination in nationality laws?
In the past 2 weeks, so in the midst of the pandemic playing out, in the Bahamas, there was a major decision by the Supreme Court. Bahamas is one of 3 countries globally that denies men the same right as women to pass nationality to children born outside of legal marriage. And the Supreme Court of the Bahamas just about 2 weeks ago, in June, made the decision that the Constitution actually does uphold the rights of men to pass nationality to their children born outside of legal marriage. The Global Campaign for Equal Nationality Rights and our partners in the Bahamas, Equality Bahamas, are also concerned. While we have this positive development, there are some indications by the government that they might appeal this decision. And we're very hopeful that this decision will be upheld, as it promotes the equality that should be the right of every citizen of the Bahamas. And we're very hopeful that this ruling will stand. And we're hopeful that in the coming years, there'll be further action to address the remaining gender discrimination in the nationality of the Bahamas, where married Bahamian women do not have the right to pass nationality to children born abroad, nor the same right as Bahamian men to pass nationality to their spouse. We also, last year in October 2019, the UN Refugee Agency had a high-level segment on statelessness, where governments were invited to make commitments to take action to address root causes of statelessness. And happily, we had a number of countries that made commitments to enact nationality law reforms to uphold gender equality. And actually, all of those countries that made commitments at that forum were from Africa. So we had some countries including Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, the Republic of Congo, and Eswatini in Southern Africa, which is actually the last country in Southern Africa that has a nationality law that denies women the same right as men to pass nationality to their children and spouses. So that those commitments are huge, and we look forward to working with civil society and the government in those countries to support those processes. We also have had a number of countries that have expressed commitments to enact reform in this area. Liberia is undertaking a review of their nationality law to bring it in line with the gender equality in the Constitution. And so we're hopeful that new nationality law will be passed to uphold women's equal right to pass nationality. Togo is another country where there has been a commitment to take action to bring the nationality law in alignment with the equal nationality rights that are enshrined in the Constitution.
Catherine Harrington, thank you.
Thank you for having this discussion and helping us raise awareness of this important issue for gender equality and nationality rights.
And thank you for being with us for another episode of IHR TV. From myself, Margherita Kargasaki. Until next time, goodbye.